Hello and welcome to today's daily news analysis. So today is 24th of March 2022. We are covering the Hindu newspapers Delhi edition. As part of our initiative, I make it a point to share questions for mains answer writing. And you can get your answers evaluated up to 2 answers every week. All you have to do is share your answer in a PDF format on the WhatsApp or Telegram. So the details are there in the description box below. Now I have 2 topics today that I feel are important. So one is about this unfortunate incident that took place in a godown where migrant workers were charred to death. So I believe this could be a question from the point of view of industrial safety, occupational hazards, and what is the government doing about this, right? So I've inferred this topic from this news over here. So this I'll discuss. This is important. But it's a bit atypical topic, not a conventional type of topic, but yes, UPSC can ask you a question on this. Now the second question that I have, it is about the marital rape. Now marital rape is exempted from the definition of rape. That is, if a rape or if sexual intercourse by a husband on his wife. So that is exempted from the definition of rape if it is forceful. But a recent judgment from the Karnataka High Court has upheld the charges against the husband who was accused of raping wife. So this is very, very significant from the point of view of polity, not constitution, polity. Right? So this is important. Okay, so I'm asking you this question from the point of view of GS2. I could have also framed it in a different way where this could become a social problem. So social issue, then it could be asked in GS1. Women's safety is mentioned in GS1, but here I'm more inclined into the law aspect, that therefore it is on GS2. Now these topics that you see are important. This is a remark that is coming from the foreign secretary of a country. So it gives us a good insight about India's foreign policy. So this is important. Artemis program is important from the point of view of space developments, science and tech. In fact, with reference to Artemis program, this is different. There is also something known as Artemis Accords. I have a video on this Artemis Accords, and that is again very important in the way of how the space sector should be regulated. So that is covered already. Artemis program is different from Artemis Accords. This article over here gives us an insight about government's performance of its flagship schemes, particularly Swachh Bharat Mission and Jal Jeevan Mission. So we get to know about them. So government schemes. Right then, so let's get on with the first topic. So a significant development has taken place on the foreign trade front. That is, our exports have crossed the $400 billion annual target. So short of the deadline, we have surpassed this 400 billion target. And this exports is only for goods, not for services. Okay. Now this indicates 2 things. First thing that it indicates is that there is an improvement in industrial output. If we are exporting something, especially goods, that means there is a demand for what we are producing. So there is a demand, products are of better quality. And other thing is the production is increasing. We are able to fulfill our basic domestic needs and we are able to export the surplus. Right. So it tells us about the industrial output. The second thing is 400 billion. Okay, fine. But is it better than the pre-pandemic level? Because if we talk about the pandemic, then everything was closed. So it is not a good indicator. But in light of the pre-pandemic level, so 2018-19, the exports were at $331 billion, right? $331 billion, and now we are at $400 billion, which is a significant achievement. It is a significant achievement over here, and thereby the Prime Minister congratulates the farmers, weavers, and the MSME on this achievement. It's well deserved. Okay. Now, think about it. If the exports are increasing, then that means our current account deficit should come down. The current account deficit is basically an indicator which gives us a reference of the difference between exports and imports. If we are exporting more than what we are importing, then the country stands to gain. And if we are importing more and exporting less, that means more money is being shelled out from us, from India, and going outside. So that is deficit. So the current account deficit should improve, but actually the current account deficit has increased despite this exports. And one reason I could say is, there could be many reasons, but one reason could be the crude prices. The crude prices and the depreciation of rupee because of all the external factors that are going on. Right, so that could be the reason of the high current account deficit. It's not mentioned in the article, by the way. Center to recall order on COVID containment. Naturally, things have improved, and the center says, okay, as part of the Disaster Management Act, the conditions we had imposed on containment so that the COVID does not spread, those decisions have been taken aback. Clear? Okay. And all these decisions that the government was taking were issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs on the directions of the National Disaster Management Authority. So we should know about this. What is this National Disaster Management Authority? Right, we'll come to that NDMA thing first, but let's do what all the government has said. So they say, okay, fine, this will not be there. This was done on the guidelines of the NDMA. Nevertheless, the issue of wearing of mask, following the hand hygiene, those things have to be still be followed. And if people don't follow, then the local authorities will, or the state police will have the authority to punish, right? To give some sort of penal provisions, impose fine, imprison, whatever that can be done according to the norms of the Indian Penal Code. Now, I don't know how the center is giving directions to the state, because it is the 7th schedule says that the policing, law and order is the domain of the state. Now, coming back to the NDMA. So, National Disaster Management Authority is a statutory body that was set up by an act of the parliament or the statute of the parliament known as the Disaster Management Act. And what is its task? Its task is to lay down the policies, plans and guidelines for disaster management. And it envisions the ethos of prevention, mitigation, preparedness and response. This is basically the disaster management cycle. And the NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, is presided over by the Prime Minister of the country. Right, so that is it. Rest you have all the thing over here. Now I have put this on bold. NDMA logo reflects aspirations of the national vision, but it is basically the flag of India. I mean, not even flag, it's the map of India. Now comes the question. 11 migrant workers dead in Godown fire. Fine, you can see the scene. This is in Telangana. This had happened. And you can see the work conditions must have been very, very poor. The people were living in the factory itself. The factory didn't compensate for a different settlement for them. So this raises certain concerns. It raises concerns over, I am not interested in the article. Everybody died. One person jumped off and he slept. I don't know how he managed to sleep with broken legs. The Telangana government said that, okay, fine, we will give you some sort of compensation, ex gratia compensation. And Prime Minister also said that I'll give, he basically said he had pain for the loss of the life, and he has decided to give rupees 2 lakhs from the Prime Minister National Relief Fund. So this is something that I'll explain for prelims. But now, for the time being, the mains aspect. See, this is the workplace environment, and it raises certain concerns about occupational safety, right? Occupational safety, workplace environment, doesn't it? It raises certain concerns. Okay. So lack of concern for safety can be seen. And one more thing that we can say is that what were the authorities doing if others are not implementing? Don't we have inspectors who inspect things? What is happening with that regard? What is the administration doing? They have so much power, so much authority. What are they doing? Why is it happening? There are guidelines, there are norms, there are laws against which they can penalize the factory owners. Okay, so lack of concern for safety is seen, and occupational safety, occupational workplace environment, and the role of the authorities. Now read the question over here. Examine the issue of occupational safety and industrial hazards with reference to India's context. Right. So this is one example, one thing that we see over here. Beyond this, I may like to add certain other aspects. What about diseases, occupation related diseases like silicosis? Silicosis is because of, if you go to a plant or a factory, people are smelling, inhaling the dust particles, and because of which their tracts, the lung tracts, are getting affected. Living in unhygienic conditions, long work hours, that is also there given. Long work hours, wages. Okay, so these are certain concerns over here. Then I think you must have heard about deaths taking place along the mining areas also, right? So that is also there. Then injuries taking place while doing certain operations. I have seen so many factory workers who have lost one odd finger. Right. So industry related accidents or injuries that are taking place. So this is the issue basically. These are the certain issues over here. Now, if we look at the facts over here, government says they have done a commendable job in arresting this issue. So this was being heard in the parliament also. And they said that they came up with the data of 2011 to 2016, and they say that the conditions are much better, and they cited the issue of occupational diseases. We don't have much facts actually, occupational diseases, and they said that only 562 people were reported to have fallen ill because of poor work conditions. Only 562 people. Can you imagine? Only 562 people across the entire country. So many workforce population is there, right? In crores maybe. Out of that, only 562 people had fallen ill. Somewhere it shows that the government does not have statistics. It shows that there is underreporting. When there is underreporting, everything seems fine, right? Ignorance is bliss. So this is a problem, underreporting. Now, the facts and figures that we have is for formal sector, those that are registered. But what about the informal sector, which is about 50% of the about 50 to 55% of the GDP is coming from there. The production is taking place over there, and about 90% of the labor force is working in the informal sector. So that means you have data only for 10%, and that too doesn't seem very accurate, right? So this is an issue over here. Now coming to the authorities part, right? Now let us do let's come to the authorities also. So the inspectors, when we have inspectors who are to supervise everything and see everything, so in our country we have one inspector for 487 factories, which is very low. And if we talk about 487 factories, it is roughly 25,415 workers. So one person who's responsible for so many workers. And don't get me on the issue of bribery and the malpractices that take place, right? So these are certain issues over here. So let me revise it one by one. Poor work conditions, lack of concern for safety, questionable role of the authorities, right? Questionable role of the authorities. And we'll add one more thing over here, that is the inadequacy of the government's policies, rules, regulations, etc. And when we talk about this, most of this industrial safety is coming from laws like the Mines Act, the Factories Act. And if you read the year, 1885, 1891, They are very old British era laws. They need to be updated. They are outdated. They need to be updated in accordance with the modern times. So this has to change. So what can be done? So first of all, we need to, India as part of a connected world, we have signed certain agreements, so we are part of certain conventions. Particularly, we are certain conventions as part of our membership of the International Labour Organization, a specialized agency of the UN. We must look to abide by the standards that are prescribed by the conventions as part of the ILO, International Labour Organization. We must look to bring about the best industrial practices. We must update the policies. We must look to regulate the laws also there. We need to update that. In fact, in this regard, the government of India was working on something known as labor codes, and basically there are different labor laws that are there, and all these labor laws are being consolidated into 4 different labor codes. And with reference to the occupational safety, we have the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. So we are actually working on this. Right, so this has to be done. We have brought about the code. We must look at the contentious issues and maybe update this also. These accidents are still taking place. It is a long time that the code has come. Okay. We must look to engage the civil society. The civil society, particularly the labor organization, while formulation of the policies in the regulation or the implementation part also. So all stakeholders must have a say or some sort of a representation in the labor related aspects. We must also emphasize upon statistics for labor sector. We need to improve upon that as well. The saying that only 562 people were affected by disease, etc., it reflects that we do not have the statistics, or if we have the statistics, there is very poor reporting. Right, so these issues have to be looked into. And one more thing, it is not just about the labor who are marginalized, and this becomes an issue of social justice also. It is not just about that. What happened during the Bhopal gas tragedy? It was an industrial accident, right? So industrial accident, unsafe practices that were going on, and because of this, the entire city suffered. So it's a very serious issue about safety and the work safety, health, not just of the labor. This can actually get aggravated and affect the health of the entire environment or the ecosystem. Right? So you have all the points, and I expect you to write an answer on this. Now, Prime Minister had said that, see, I will provide 2 lakh rupees as ex gratia compensation to the people who lost their lives. So now comes the question as to what is the Prime Minister National Relief Fund. So this was formed by the first Prime Minister of a country, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, which was in pursuance of the issue of the partition that was going on, and to provide relief to the families who were affected by the partition, displaced persons from Pakistan, right, for that. Now that thing had gotten over. Now the PM National Relief Fund was extended to any other calamity that takes place in a country, like floods, cyclones, etc. So for that, we need some sort of a contingency. Some buffer has to be there with the government, so that if something happens, we have money to provide relief to such people. So that PM National Relief Fund was continued, and it still provides compensation for various things, including medical treatment like heart surgeries, kidney, etc. And the decision about this is naturally taken by the Prime Minister. Now recall the concept that the government can appropriate money, any money that the government takes can be done only by the sanction of the Parliament. No taxation without representation. Yesterday only we did it. But with reference to PM National Relief Fund, that principle is not applicable. the permission of the parliament, approval of the parliament is not required, only the approval of the prime minister. Why is it so? Because the money that is coming under the Prime Minister National Relief Fund is nothing but the contributions of the people, the voluntary contributions of the people over here. It is not coming from taxation or any law that is created by the parliament. So it is not part of the Consolidated Fund of India. Right? Consolidated Fund of India is something different. Basically, expenditures, revenue of the government takes place from here. This is voluntary donations that people have made to this fund, and therefore the sanction of the parliament is not required. Now you must know these days, the way the prelims is being asked, you must know the inner details of things, right? So one detail you got about the parliament thing. The other thing is that it is recognized as a trust under the Income Tax Act, and the contributions that are made as part of this is 100%. There is 100% deduction from taxable income. That is that part of your income which you have donated. So for that quantum, you will not be taxed. Right? So actually, rich people stand to benefit by contributing to this. Now, this is again a very important topic. High Court upholds charges against husband for raping wife. Okay. So, gruesome person, done very bad things. Normally this thing, this husband is not liable. He cannot be charged for rape. Even if it is forceful sex, cannot be charged for rape. So the punishment of rape is coming from section 375 of the Indian Penal Code. And in this, there is an exemption that is provided to the husband. Right? So wife cannot go to the court or go to the authorities and say that my husband has engaged in forceful or sexual intercourse without my consent. That cannot take place, right? And in this case, this particular woman had gone to the trial court, and the trial court had rejected the plea. So basically, she cannot go to this. Maybe by proxy, she can say that, okay, fine, it's a case of domestic violence, and then that's a different story. But rape, one cannot be charged for the rape. But in this situation, the High Court of Karnataka has taken an exemption to the situation. It's taken an exemption to this exemption that is given under section 375 IPC, which protects the husband. It says this was very bad, this thing actually. He was engaged in unnatural sex, forceful sex, engaging in sex in front of the daughter. So he actually is said to remark that using his wife as a sex slave. Right, it's bad actually. It's if you go into the details of the thing. Okay. Now my question over here is, you can see one issue that is very, very bad. Now my question over here is, bring out the contentious issues in criminalization of marital rape. State suitable suggestions to overcome these issues. Naturally, some contentious issues are there because of which the marital rape has not been criminalized. There must be a reason why the British in India, our Indian Penal Code is written by the Britishers. So British in India felt that husband should be protected, and that is also the stand of the government. So very recently, about some time back, Madam Smriti Irani, one of the ministers from the BJP government, so she had very strongly spoken against not having protection. Not having this exemption from marital rape. So what are these contentious issues? But before this, we need to establish the gravity of the situation. But unfortunately, since marital rape is not a crime, even though it is a rape, but it is not a crime, we do not find records. The government says that we do not have records, and when we have to find records about crime, we refer to the NCRB. But we do have anecdotal evidence we have independent surveys which reflect that the issue of marital rape is very, very serious or severe. Okay, right. So this now, then if it is very serious, why aren't we having it? In fact, there was a committee also formed which was to look into the issue of sexual harassment, and this was in the pretext of the Nirbhaya case that had taken place. So this is known as the Justice Verma Committee report, and Justice Verma Committee also said that marital rape should be made punishable offence. He had raised objection to the exemption that is coming from section 375. This is absolutely wrong. This should not take place. And many other agencies have also said. Okay. So what are the contentious issues? Now, one more thing about here, it is also about women's autonomy, women's ability to say yes or no, or having consent about her own body, as to her not being unwilling to engage in this sex activity, sexual intercourse. Okay, so contentious issues. So first of all, the government of the day says that it may hamper the institution of marriage. Right? It may hamper the institution of marriage. Okay, the wife may go to the court and or the police and say that so and so has engaged in forceful intercourse, and this is a rape. I'm not okay with it. Now, how does the husband prove? I'm giving the points also side by side. How does the husband prove, or so and so prove, that this particular thing was consensual and this wasn't? How will it be proved? So, the burden of proof. These are points that are given not by me. I didn't make these points. This is the points that are coming from the National Commission of Women. So, we need to define the burden of proof. Who will prove that so and so is guilty, or so and so is not guilty? Husband is not guilty, or wife proves that so and so is engaged in forceful intercourse with me. Next is the definition of consent. The entire issue of rape is about consensus, the consent of the wife. So what is consent? Is it yes? Is it no? Is it implied? What is consent over here? Right? So this is very, very vague over here. There is a lot of vagueness over here. So it's because of these issues that we are not able to, or there is the issue of criminalization of marital rape has not been done as yet. So these are the basic issues over here. Okay. It may also be used for, for blackmailing, etc. And the rape provisions are very, very stringent, very, very severe. Okay. So these are the issues over here. But we have, answer is flowing, but we have certain countries, a large number of countries who have actually banned marital rape. I mean, not banned, they have removed this exemption of marital rape. Marital rape is a punishable offense, but why not in India? Large number of countries, including the Britishers who made this law, including Nepal in the South Asian region. So it is not just developed countries, even the lesser developed countries have also banned this, right? It is a punishable offense. So India must also do it. If their institution of their marriages are not getting hampered, if they are able to find a solution, why can't we find a solution to this issue? And how can we find? By defining the law, refining the law over here, learning from the experiences of these countries, focusing upon the definition of the burden of proof. The onus of burden of proof will come on whom? The consent issue, the definition of consent has to be defined upon, that has to be worked upon. Right? So this is how we can actually overcome these issues. Right? You have to do a bit of juggling over here with reference to issues and what reforms have to be brought out. So maybe some of these points can come in the suggestion component also. Right, so you can get your answers checked, and yeah. Coming to the next topic, Artemis program. NASA's new moon mission. Now I told you there is also something known as Artemis Accord, that is separate from Artemis program. Artemis Accord is about regulation of the space sector. I have a video on that, separate video, you can have a look. Artemis program is different. Artemis program is NASA's new moon mission, and this is important for your prelims. Okay, so I'll briefly explain this. Basically, there is a space launch. There is a space launch system. Yes, there is an SLS. This is a rocket which is working on cryogenic engine. See, they have to take people to the moon, which is very, very far away. So they need a very powerful rocket. So for this is a cryogenic rocket. This is a cryogenic launch vehicle. It will be launching. What will it launch? It may launch a satellite. It may launch a crewed mission to moon, whatever. Cryogenic. Cryogenic is when you need more power, and cryogenic means very, very cold. Cryo means cold. So liquefied hydrogen and oxygen is there. They are combusted, and lot of energy is generated. And liquefied means condensed, right? It is compressed. Okay. So this space launch satellite, space launch system, that is of NASA, this will go, and in this there is a capsule or a spacecraft known as Orion. So this Orion will go and it will orbit along the moon. So there is the Earth over here. So this rocket goes, it goes over here, and this gets disintegrated. This rocket gets disintegrated, and it discharges Orion spacecraft over here, which revolves 100 kilometers along the moon, on the orbit of the moon. Now there will be two missions over here. So this is the first mission, right? So Artemis program basically aims to this, according to this one, Artemis 1, this will move around here, it will collect data, and again it will come back to Earth. So Orion is a reusable reusable spacecraft. Basically, it can be reused. It will go out, it will enter the orbit of the moon and come back. Right. So that is what is happening in Artemis 1. So what NASA basically wants to do over here is, NASA's overall aim is, NASA wants to, they would just want to see, okay, how does the Orion works? It is an uncrewed mission, that is, nobody is sitting over here. Eventually what they want to do is that by 2024, they want to send astronauts to moon, a manned mission to moon. So they want to send, and in this should include the first woman to land on the moon and the first person of color on the moon. That is the idea over here. And what will happen, this Orion will, people will be sitting in this, it will land on the moon. It may also provide for maybe certain robots, etc. Rover missions would be there, some robots will be there that will be roving around here and there on the moon. They will collect samples and then come back, bring the samples back to the Earth. So as part of the Artemis program, one thing is that there will be a base camp on the surface of the moon, and the base camp would have people, etc. on the moon, right, and whatever things are required. And then there will be a gateway. So gateway is a critical component of NASA's sustainable lunar operations, something that will be remaining in the space, right? So somebody would send, like the International Space Station, like the Japanese Space Agency or the European Space Agency, they will supply whatever supplies are required. This will act as a gateway, and this will provide to the base camp over here, and the base, like that the cycle will keep going on, right? People, if somebody is living on the moon, people will need things at the end of the day. So a gateway will be there, and then there will also be a base camp. Now this knowledge over here will enable NASA to have further deep space probes, right? So going beyond moon and beyond, maybe having a colony on Mars also subsequently, who knows. So deep space probes going far, far away. So that is the idea of the Artemis program, and the Artemis program Artemis program, the name Artemis is basically coming from the name of a Greek god. So it's basically the sister of god Apollo, coming from the Greek mythology. Shringla calls for alignment between United Nations and League of States. My Wi-Fi wasn't working, so I couldn't have the League of Arab States basically. So it's basically the Arab countries. This includes the Northern Africa. If you can look in the map, visualize Northern Africa, the Arabic countries, UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc. So these countries are part of the League of Arab States. Okay, so basically our Foreign Secretary, Mr. Shringla, has gone to the United Nations Security Council, which will be presided by the UAE. So UAE is having the presidency. They will be setting the agenda of the United Nations Security Council, and being an Arab state, they will also call upon the issue of Palestine. So Palestine, which is very, very dear to the Arabs, and this is basically this region over here, and this is Israel, and this is Palestine. So Palestine is, this region is very, very dear because it is the homeland of the Jews, and for Arabs also, historically speaking, it is very, very important. I think the third most important mosque is based over here, and including this as sites that are of great importance even for the Christians, right? So for them also it is very, very important. So there has always been an issue between, it's basically this, our Foreign Secretary is going because of this to resolve the issue, and he is going to talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and he will talk about the two-state solution. So basically Israel and Palestine are fighting, and Palestine does not have a proper statehood. So time and again you would hear of wars going on and Israel bombing upon the Palestinians. Right, you will come across this eventually. Okay, so what was proposed in the United Nations General Assembly was that there will be two-state solution, and India says that yes, there should be a two-state solution, that is a state of Israel and a state of Palestine, which is to the left of, which is to the west of River Jordan, right? So west of River Jordan, and maybe that is why since it is on the western side of River Jordan, this is known as the West Bank, and this is known as the Gaza Strip. Now you know normally there is this confusion that this is on the western side, so this should have been called as the West Bank. Think about it, this is actually the eastern bank of the Mediterranean Sea, and this is the West Bank. So that was the idea, and they have always been fighting, right? So they say that we need to have a two-state solution as part of the Middle East peace process. Now, what is the Middle East peace process? So Middle East peace process is basically an agenda. It's basically about resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, which was to resolve the issue, and eventually it came to be known as Middle East peace process because this region is Middle East also. And because of this Arab issue, Israel has been forced into war with other Arab countries also, like Egypt, Jordan, etc. Okay, so this is set by the leadership of the US, and it is basically a step-by-step ways of resolution of the violence that is, or the tensions that are there between Israel and Palestine. So resolving that. Okay. Now, one more thing you will come across is Oslo Accords. So Oslo Accords, again for actually, in 1993, the Israeli government and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, right? So when they are not a proper state, but they have a territory, but it is not recognized as a country. So the Palestinian Liberal Organization agreed on a plan to implement a two-state solution as part of the Oslo Accords, leading to the establishment of the Palestinian Authority. So you get it, Oslo Accords is associated with which of the following? And I feel it can be asked in the mains also, but since I had already given you questions, I didn't ask you, right? So I'll cover this later subsequently. Right, for the time being, this is all I have. You can read the relevant text if you wish. Few villages received waste disposal infrastructure. And this we get to know from the parliamentary panel. So it was being heard, and this was with reference to the report that was coming from Ministry of Water Resources, which is now known as the Jal Shakti. So see, Parliament is there, right? Parliament is very, very big. There is Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and within Lok Sabha is one of the houses, Rajya Sabha is another house. They cannot discuss and deliberate on every issue. So for this, they have various panels or committees which look into the works of particular ministries or particular things that the government is doing. So they are specifically dealing with that. Now, I am basically using two concepts over here. The role of the committees, parliamentary committees, in holding the government accountable. So here they are holding the government accountable for poor performance of the Swachh Bharat and the Jal Jeevan scheme, right? Jal Jeevan scheme over here, or Jal Jeevan mission. Okay. So what is it basically? So this was being heard. The government has to answer as to what all ministers or whosoever is there. In fact, this committee was being headed by a BJP MP itself, but still it was critical of what the government is doing. So the performance of the committees is another theme actually. Okay, so Swachh Bharat mission had two components. So the first component, I think we all know, it was about construction of toilets, which they say that by 2019 it was achieved. They claim to have achieved. I don't agree with that. So by 2019 this was done. The next phase of Swachh Bharat mission was about, it was more complex, and it was about community level infrastructure for, solid waste management sites should be there. There should be sewage treatment plants, biogas plants for biodegradable waste, grey water management, the sewage water, right? Grey water, it should be treated, it should be recycled and reused in agriculture maybe. So grey water management, soak pits, treatments of fecal sludge. So all of this were to be done. Now they say that, one reason is ministry says, nah, we don't have anything to do. It is basically the states who are not cooperating with us. States are not cooperating with us. We have provided the money to states, but states are not doing well. And the states also say that, what do we do? The pandemic was there. And because of the pandemic, our focus was on, people were dying like anything. Right? So our focus was on those areas. So thereby our performance is not very good. Right? So this is what it has said. So they put the onus on the states over here. Anyways, so this is about the Swachh Bharat mission over here. And talking about the Jal Jeevan mission, it's very important. It basically strives to provide all rural homes portable tapped water connections. So all rural homes will have tapped water connections. This is very, very good actually if they are able to do it. But the amount of money that is being spent, because the government had sanctioned the money, so the parliament had sanctioned money, so 50,000 crores, later that was reduced to 45,000 crores, and later only expenditure incurred is only 28,000 crores, so which is very, very less as compared to 50,000 crores. And most of the big states have utilized very little of the funds that they got. Only less than 25% they have used. So imagine you go given 100 rupees and you use only 25 rupees. And if you use less money, it's an indicator that you have not implemented the scheme well, because everything will cost money. Right? So this is it. So this essentially concludes our analysis for today. So thank you for streaming in to IASPrimers with me, Shubhashish. Bye bye, take care and all the best.